Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the last class of the semester. Right? Right? Okay, good. Yeah, so went very fast. Yeah, so thanks for showing up. Thanks for sticking around. There's no final. You're all good. And today I'm mostly going to be talking about sort of some wrap-up stuff. I'll be presenting my final project, which I hope will be to your approval. My final project is making sense of the massive gobs of text y'all put into the machine, and sort of thinking about what that looks like. It pulls out. I have something that pulls out like sort of like a weird report for each of you based on just like, this person has been talking about these things. And then I don't think I'll take up nearly the entire class, so my intention is sort of like situate y'all to that data, show you some little fun things I just added to the machine. And then for the rest of for the sort of remainder of the time, sort of do this sort of small group thing and sort of you can like look over what the bot thinks you're into, sort of talk about it in your little group. I'll come around and sort of like chat with you a bit about what's going on there, and then we'll be roughly good. I'm also going to talk a little bit about if you're interested in this type of thing, the research that I do in my life and in my lab and that kind of stuff. We'll talk about a couple avenues you can take to involve yourself in the future, coming semesters and all that. So let's see, what order should I do this in? Let's do the boring. Oh, I also want to do like a quick tutorial on how to set up your own Skellybot server, because it's very easy to do. So it's just a couple of clicks, and you can have your own version of this thing and run it until I shut it down, at which point, which I don't know, probably won't be very soon because I'm going to be working on it continuously. So we're going to do that before the second half of class. So if anyone has questions, wants to set that up, you can do so. Don't use it to cheat, but it's no different than any other AI thing. And so I don't feel like I'm giving you any forbidden weaponry that wouldn't already be available. So yeah, all good by that. So yeah, let's start with the procedural stuff. So if you're curious about this type of research, this sort of general domain, and you would like to keep affiliated with the weird stuff I do in my life, the easiest way to do that is to join this server, which is the research server that I run for my lab and research. And Aaron's in there, and there's an accumulation of other students from various iterations of my life. It's Human Research Lab. It's sort of like a play. Well, it's not a play, it's just a sort of weird acronym of Human Movement Neuroscience. And the specific tag that I put for Northeastern students is Neumons, Neumon, just because it's funny. So I will take this, how do I do that? Invite people, edit invite, never expire, generate new link, copy that link, go to our server, go to, I guess, announcements. If you want to join my research lab server, click here. And then you can do that. So you click that, you'll pop up in the server, and then, it's used kind of in a functional way. So it might be sort of like conversations you're just jumping into the middle of. But I'll make announcements there about like what the general like on campus sort of, I have like an open lab meeting type of thing that I do. And I'll put the schedule there. And in general, mostly also in specific, the on-campus lab thing that I do is always open invite, and it's always like open schedule. So if there's like a time period that it's going on, and you can only show up for part of that time. Show up for part of that time. You don't need to ask to show up. If you show up in a year and a half, well, I may not be here, but if you show up in 6 months, you don't have to announce it. Just show up. It'll be good. And the other place you can go, wait, who's in the voice channel here? Is it me? Oh, somebody accidentally joined the voice channel. To exit, you click on this thing. Where is it? Somebody else joined the voice channel. You'll figure it out. The other place, if you're curious about specifically the free mocap side of this thing, free mocap is the mocap-y thing we did at the beginning. This is the server for that. This is a more public-facing thing. Last I checked, there were 2,500 some odd folks in there hanging out. Sort of a roughly, at this point, I think pretty even mix between like students and researchers and neuroscience, robotics, clinical stuff, and then about an equal mix of animators, game designers, mostly on the sort of indie side of things. So if you're curious about that, right here, say, if you want to join the free mocap project public server, click here. And yeah, that's the sort of public-facing space. So if you're curious about that project, want to get involved, want to see what's going on there, a lot more going on in that space. Different vibe, public-facing type of thing. So you're welcome to do that. Yeah, and then so thinking about next semester, I don't quite know what the schedule is going to be over winter break. That's always kind of a grab bag. But in the spring semester, I will have some kind of a lab meeting type of thing once a week on campus. It'll mostly be, me and Aaron meeting up and doing stuff. And on the research side of things, mostly at Richards 453, we'll talk about. I'll post at some point in the winter break. I will post something in the schedule there. But I think it sort of depends on what my class schedule is, which I haven't fully checked yet. But I think it'll be sometime on Thursday afternoons, Tuesday or Thursday afternoons. But just keep an eye out there, and you'll see what's up. And yeah, same kind of basic rules as before. Like the white dots on the channels just means that there has been some message posted, and a red number means that you have specifically been tagged. If you see a red one showing up from the lab server, it's because I've probably tagged the Newmon role, which means like open conversation, open announcement for all NEU student affiliated humans. Yeah, the other thing, this is a little more, I'm not sure if anyone would be properly into this, but I will also make an announcement about what I'm going to be doing in the class I'm doing next semester. So that's going to be an inquiries session. So it's the first semester freshman, which y'all presumably all did at some level. It's going to be basically the same class, except split into twice a week. So I'm going to cover mostly the same topics, just in a shorter form. And what I'm going to do is it's going to be sort of split half and half, where one of the weeks, one of the sessions, I believe it's Tuesday, Thursday, and the Tuesday one will be like lecture-y types of stuff, and then the Thursday one will be more like research-y types of things. So talking, the talking to the bot, there'll be more time to do like actual data analysis, stuff like that, because I think the way that you usually do inquiries is like you're supposed to present like on a paper at the end of the semester, but I do it more like you do like a little mini research project. So if anyone is interested and the timing works out, that will also be kind of like open invite for upperclassmen types who want to show up and have an opportunity to, dig a little deeper into this stuff, participate in kind of a more like constrained research project, help some young freshmen figure out what papers are. And you've seen how this goes. Like there's a lot of surface area, and there's really not in many, like if I were to teach this class to a room full of professional researchers, I would teach it in almost the exact same way that I did. Like I didn't dumb it down for you. I won't be dumbing it down for them. There's not really a way to dumb it down because it's just, the surface area is so huge there's really nobody that has the sort of the specific areas of knowledge that I'm teaching except for like me, and that's just because I'm the one standing up here. So with specifically on that research side of things, if you wanted to show up, you would have, you know, the ability to kind of like, you know, mix and match and sort of help out people as they're doing stuff, like maybe push some people in certain directions to sort of get them to look at things that you care about. And then, you know, they present at the end of the semester. Anyone that you helped with, you get your name on the poster, and you could probably put like a source thing, the student undergrad research thing, which is a nice way to kind of like pad the resume with a bunch of lines of like, I helped with research projects, and it will be legitimate. So, you know, I don't know if anyone feels like sitting in on an additional class for which you will get no credit, but you might enjoy the experience. So I will also make that sort of announcement once I know more about what that schedule will be. Yeah, and also similarly, like, I guess it will sort of depend, because I was going to say you can sort of come and go whenever you want throughout the semester, which is true, but also it has never been the case that the way the class goes is the way that I think it will have gone. So I'll make an announcement sort of before the beginning of the semester about what I think the vibe will be. And if that shifts, just, you know, I don't know, ask about it, or who cares, just show up, doesn't matter. Yeah. Oh, and on a similar note, I know that for a lot of y'all's degrees, you have to have some kind of a research lab. You can also do like independent studies and things like that. I don't know, you'd have to talk to like the advisor core about what the specific rules are, but I am open for a lot of that type of thing. I probably don't have a ton of my like available time to like do sort of truly independent studies, but if you wanted to do something like that in order to cover a research credit or however they do that, I'd be happy to work something out that would sort of overlap with the stuff I'm doing with the inquiries class, and sort of find some way that you could pick a project and sort of interact that way. Because I have heard that it is like finding space in those research classes can be difficult, and oftentimes it's not studying, it's like the domain of inquiry may not be what you're particularly interested in, particularly for the data science minded folks. Yeah, okay, so there is that. Also, just to note, again, I think I've said this before, but in the resources channel, there's a link to this playlist of YouTube recordings, which are basically these ones that have been recorded. It's every lecture except for one where I screwed it up and the video was corrupted. But you know, they're available, they're online, they will be online presumably until, you know, Google dies or the sun burns out, whichever comes first. Probably Google, but we'll see. And yeah, so all the things I just said, if you want to check in, it'll be there. The lecture from last time, and for the majority of you who weren't here, is up there. And yeah, and at some point, not now, hopefully before the end of the semester, hopefully before the end of winter break, Skellybot will have the ability to eat YouTube URLs. So just kind of give it a URL and it'll pull a transcript and eat it and give a sort of summary that way. So you could you could review what's been going on here. One of the funny things about like teaching a class like this, using specifically like a techie tool that I have built, every class sort of builds on the functionalities of the previous one. So this class, I think the main thing I completed with this, I didn't really add any functionality to the bot throughout the course of this semester, but I did a lot in terms of, like in the back end, in terms of like analyzing and processing the data and sort of producing these reports we're going to talk about. So, and I think into the next semester, I want to add more ability for the bot to kind of pull information into a given chat. So if you have like, oh, here's a PDF that I care about, or here's like a DOI or something like that, or a YouTube video or a website, or, you know, a massive, an actual paper, adding functionality that the bot will be able to just like, you could be in a chat and say like, hey, know about this thing, and it will just like pull it in, and then you could ask questions about that. So that'll be fun. Cool. And I'm sure there's questions about that. That's what the second half will be about. Yeah, what's that?
Sorry, so is your chatbot going to be able to eat like maybe PDFs and DOIs?
Yeah, hope so.
Like same time frame for the two URLs? Like
Roughly, it sort of depends. A lot of this, both of those tasks are pretty similar at a certain level. It's like adding to the context, and like particularly for large things, it's like there's a vector search type of thing that wants to happen. Otherwise, the context, like if you pull in like a 300-page document, that's so much text it'll kind of like overwhelm the conversation. So there's stuff you got to do to make that more efficient. And at a certain level, like the difference between pulling a transcript from a YouTube video and chopping up a PDF, those differences are not that significant relative to the just like the core task of like adding that functionality to the bot itself. So it sort of depends. I have other things to do, and there's sort of the ability to judge the scale of a task is an impossible forever task. So I hope to add stuff like that before next semester, but time will tell. But if you, yeah, I mean, I also intend like at the moment, the bot has mostly been just like a thing that I make and play with and sort of give to some people, and some other professors have used it, but it hasn't really been a public facing project like Free MoCap is. I'm going to start doing that for this project, starting probably through next semester. I want that to be kind of like a slow roll. So that will change the vibe a lot. It will hopefully become something of like a proper open source project, as opposed to like a toy that I'm hanging and playing with. And just in general, I think like there's some very interesting like teaching methods emerging of like, you know, the stuff we're going to talk about shortly about like just this very interesting process of I can give these incredibly dense lectures and then walk around and have y'all all kind of like whichever part of that piqued your interest, you get to explore that to some interest. I think there's something interesting there that I'm curious about keeping exploring, and then making that available to other educational humans, be they teacher types or just like people who like to learn things. Incidentally, I'm kind of talking backwards here, but I often do. Part of the reason why I want to focus on pulling external context into conversations is related to this sort of like realization that I had when I was doing the final sort of wrap up of the kind of like the Ouroboros nature of AI text, where like there were a lot of conversations. They were, I know from experience that they were all mostly on point, mostly accurate, and mostly saying like the right-ish kind of things. But no one's checking the work here. Like, and I hope y'all were like, look just sort of on your own. But I wasn't like, it was, you know, like the bot I was thinking about like orders of, or like distances from a human and distances from the empirical measurement. It's sort of like this chain of reasoning we've talked about in a lot of research settings, where it's like you, the human, asks a question and the bot produces an answer. And at the end of that, you have a conversation where there's like these human bot couplets. And then you summarize that and you say, okay, here's the summary of that conversation. And you summarize the summaries and okay, here's like a report on that thing. But at some point you're just sort of like the AI text is analyzing the AI text is analyzing the AI text, and sort of like it progresses farther and farther from like the real natural world. So I think it's not too insane to imagine a setting here where like the bot looks at the questions and goes and like pulls some review articles from PubMed, and then instead of just like saying what it thinks it should say based off of its training, it can sort of say what it thinks it should say based off its training, plus articles pulled from humans who have presumably qualifications in peer review and empirical measurements behind them at some level. So yeah, with that in mind, let's talk about where we got with this thing. Okay, so as before, in the resources channel, in the sort of, she won't look like that for you. There's this server scrape checkpoints And the last one here is the last one I intend to produce. And yeah, but before we go into that, oh, I learned how to do this, didn't I? Is it forward or backwards?
Oh, you might have to pull it out.
Yeah, it was. I remember. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was pull it out or push it in. Okay. So, quick overview of like the basic algorithm that happens. So, so here's you. You're a human. Congratulations. And then here's the bot. It's doing its best. That's the international sign for bot. And so you ask a question, and the bot produces an answer, whatever. And then we have a couple of those, and then we're going to call this a chat or a thread or a conversation, right? So this is sort of the basic unit that you've been producing this whole time. And there are these linked blobs of text representing human question. I mean, I know there were different, it wasn't always like question answer, it was a lot of question answer, but human query bot response, human query bot response. And each one of these things is a chat. So, and then we have, and so like the structural aspect of this is like you have the server, which is the Discord server. The Discord server has categories, which is the things like the lectures and the bodies and the eyeballs and stuff like that. We didn't really wind up using a lot of this structure other than the lectures thing, but that's okay. And then within that, each category has a certain set of channels. Channels are named, again, like there's a prompting thing that can happen that, again, we didn't really use very much of, but that's okay. And then within each of these categories, each of these are chats, and each of the chats has sort of messages here, right? And so these are the sort of the basic units of the conversation. Let's see, do I have the numbers here? This is one of the things where it's like what you're seeing is what I got done. I'm sure you are familiar with working under a deadline, and the difference between the things you hope you can get done and things that actually get done is often quite dramatic. But like, this is one of those like, oh, I should know things like, we had this many chats and this many words and this many things. I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. They might just be shoved in here at some place. But the answer, it was a lot. The word count was high. Mostly bot talk in terms of like, human produced text versus bot produced text. The bot talked a lot more, because asking a question like, what is the corticospinal tract is not very many words, but the thing that it says is often quite a lot. I'm just gonna see if let's see what it'd be. I think I can do that. Oh wait, is that gonna work? Yeah, I don't think it's gonna give it to me. Yeah, I mean, that's 200,000 lines of text. But mostly it's not like functional text, so I don't really have those hard numbers there. Okay, so most of the things that we've been showing so far, like when I would sort of produce these checkpoints, you load them into Obsidian. The analyses that we were looking at was basically iterating through each of these chats. And so for the server, there were 3 categories, a bunch of channels, a bunch of chats. And so you'd get like these sort of units of chat, and I would basically feed them back into GPT-4o which is the same LLM that's driving Skellybot, the main guy. And it would do things like produce like a summary, highlights or whatever. And then importantly, it would produce these tags, which were the sort of hashtag, topic, whatever thing. And that's and up until this point, that's what we had. We'd had a bunch of summaries, AI analyses of the chats themselves. I added in this round, so you might consider this kind of like a first order summary, because you're going through each conversation. We'll call this like 0th order, because like it's human to bot, each time. And then this sort of chat summary is kind of like a first order analysis of that. So we're going over, we're lumping up all the conversations, we're looking at what's going on in there. But there's nothing that we can do at this level that will group across different conversations. Each one of these measurements is sort of independent of anything else that might be going on in the server. So now there are 2 additional categories. One is by user, and another is by topic. So by user, that's all of you guys. So basically at that point, what I did is I cycled through all of the conversations. I iterated through each one of you, so every ID that showed up in the Discord server. And then I iterated through all of the available chats. I think there were like 300 and some odd of these. I can't remember exactly what the number was. And I grouped all of the chats that you, as an individual person, contributed to. And I counted any chat where you sent a single message was a chat that you were a part of. And so then I pulled, this was a place that I really should have done. I could have done a little bit extra work here, but I ran the exact same summary on this. So you get this sort of, again, the formatting is a little weird because the formatting is the same as the one for the chats, but you get like an AI sort of generated summary of all of the things that, this person, summary, topics, tags. And so this is kind of the report about yourself. I don't fully trust that it's going to do a good job, because if you had a lot of conversations, then that's a lot of text. And so saying, hey, summarize this very, very long text, you get just kind of wonky results there. And the main thing that you see is there's a huge, what's the word, like initialization bias. Like the first text that it receives it's overrepresented in the summary. So if the first conversation you had was about dogs, and then you had a bunch of other conversations about things that aren't dogs, the summary is going to say this person really likes dogs, just by the nature of that. There's ways of getting around that, but they're more sophisticated than what I did. So you're going to have, you get what you get there. The other thing was by topic. So I went through and grabbed each of the tags from all of the summaries. I think not just the chats. I didn't look at the tags. Presumably there shouldn't be many additional tags showing up here, because the sort of the list of all users is just a complete reshuffling of the server structure. Like all the chats that are in the server are also here. I think there might be duplications there because if you participate in the same one. And so I went through and I found all of the tags that showed up in any conversation, and in any summary of any conversation. And there were like roughly 1,500 of them. So again, the number is a little bit dependent on like the prompting that was used to generate them. But there were roughly 1,500 tags that showed up in 1,500 sort of unique tags that showed up in all of the conversations of the entire server. Many of which were kind of like redundant. So you have like, one is like ACL recovery and the other one is ACL repair. Those are 2 tags and they really should be 1. So what I did is I went through these, and rather than producing something for every single tag, I only produced documents for tags that had a rank of at least 5, where rank means the number of times that they're mentioned. So every tag that showed up in at least 5 conversations got this special treatment. And that one, a little bit different from this summary, I asked it to make a Wikipedia style article. So I grabbed the topics, let's say, I don't know, biomech. And I grabbed every thread that had this tag in it, and I grouped all of these together, and I sent it to a prompt that said, create a Wikipedia style article about this. And the prompt I made there was literally, I went to the Wikipedia style guide, copied the whole thing, gave it to the bot and said, make a good prompt out of this style guide. It made a pretty good one. And then now we have that. So that is what we're about to see, is this something that will look very similar. Basically everything we have been seeing up until this point is going to be under a folder called by server, obviously. And then there's going to be 2 additional ones. It's like by topic and then by user, where user is synonymous for student. Yeah. Totally makes sense, I'm sure. Everyone's following fully. This is one of those things that, like, a lot of that explanation was for me and for anyone curious about what's about to show up. So, as before, I don't know which one that one is from. Let's see, so in downloads, okay. Yeah, and this is one of those places where, like, there was a lot of work that happened that is just going to be completely invisible from the outside, because there was a lot of stuff that you're just never going to see because it was about organization, and like the ability to do this amount of nonsense and have it be reasonable and have any kind of confidence about what's going on there is mostly an organizational task. You'll also never see all the things that were tried and never completed, and sort of like, you know, dead ends and stuff like that. So, c'est la vie. Okay, so download the thing, open the zip, go into Obsidian. This should be old hat at this point. Open the thing. The Markdown folder is the one with all the actual documents in it. The other ones just have JSON files, and it's white for some reason, as always. Control P, dark mode, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, and so this is. So unlike before, there's actually links between the articles now, so it doesn't show anything. So it shows up as some links here, and then this is if you add the tags. And look at all those weird guys. We have definitely at this point overwhelmed what Obsidian was intended for. There's also, one of the things I tried and didn't quite get working is sort of building out a better like 3D version of this so you can rotate it. Never quite got that working, but you can. So in Obsidian, the little gearbox at the bottom, click that, go to Community Plugins, turn on Community Plugins, browse 3D. I think none of these are quite what I want them to be, but they're better than what I have, which is nothing. I just search for 3D and I just turn on the top 3. Because they're all not quite what I want in slightly different ways, so you can at least look at them. And mostly this is not going to be like useful, it's just going to be like, oh look. So those show up. I'll do that one. Woo. So this one is fun. It doesn't, this is just the thing, it doesn't show the tags, but it kind of, you can start to see like how some of these things work. So like neuroscience is attached to everything. Movement is attached to many things. And a lot of the other ones just aren't linked right, mostly because I didn't generate the tags, the links properly. This one's a little better. It also doesn't show tags. This one gets a special place in my heart because they plotted the XYZ in the origin there. It does a better job of showing the titles, but it also doesn't show the tags. This one shows the tags, but it's also a bit of a horror show. Someone got too excited about bloom, which is that brightness effect. And then their commands here, display control. You can turn the bloom down, but not off. But it does show the route, the tags. It's in green, I believe. Yeah, so that one, oh, this one's by user. So again, there's not much more to say about this, about this representation of this, the graph structure, other than to kind of just note the general vibe of it, which is that these are a bunch of very interconnected topics and this exploration, even though it's not particularly functionally organized, this is representative of, this is the shape of your collective curiosity about the topic of human movement neuroscience. And if you were to click through, which we will in a second here, you would see a bunch of different conversations, hundreds of different conversations of each of you asking some kinds of questions about some kinds of things that you wanted to know more about. And although there's, the topic itself constrains the questions to some extent, and if I were to teach this class again with a bunch of different people, you would see a lot of overlap in the questions that were asked, but it wouldn't be complete overlap. If it was a different room full of people, you would have asked different questions, and then the result would have different components here. And there's something I think really neat about that. I remember at one point in the semester, after I think the motor hierarchy lecture, where I gave a very dense run through of a bunch of different parts of your nervous system. I remember going around to talk to people after that, and you were talking to the bot, and every single group that I talked to was asking about something different. There was no overlap between the things that you were curious about, which was really cool and really surprising to me. Like, you kind of expect that it's like, oh, they're all going to be interested in this, they're all going to be interested in that. But every one of you was interested in something different about that lecture, and because of the friendly machine, you're all able to explore that curiosity in a way that was constrained by the lecture, constrained by the topic, constrained by the reality of the human nervous system, but shaped specifically by the questions that you asked and the sort of the curiosities that you brought to the table. And that's something I think that's very indicative of a lot of the world and a lot of the way that we do scientific research. Like, to some extent, there is this, I think, very incorrect view of science that it's an objective thing and that there's no human element to it. And you hear people say things like, oh, if we deleted all the scientific textbooks in 1,000 years, we'd have the same textbooks. And that's not entirely false. There would certainly be, like, we would discover the same things. We would discover that there's a spinal cord and that there's a big lumpy pink thing on top. And we would discover things like Brodmann's areas and that the occipital, that this is where the vision stuff happens. But the concepts that evolve and sort of arise from scientific research are shaped by the people that do the researching. And the terms and terminology and sort of like frameworks that we develop, they're human things that we create in order to help us understand the world that we're a part of. And they're shaped by the world. You can't just make them up. There's rules about sort of the things you can say, but it's a very human endeavor, and it's something that I think is really important to think about. This is also not directly related to this, but there's this concept in philosophy of science, which I think is one of the more core concepts of it's called the Quinean web of belief. And W.V.O. Quine is the guy. But the idea is that your knowledge of the world, you as an individual, you as a collective, you as a culture, as a community, as a species, your beliefs about the world are interconnected webs of beliefs, and then each part of it overlaps with everything else. And when you are going out and trying to explore new things and learn new knowledge, when you learn some new piece of information, that information has to be integrated into that web of all the things that you believe about the world. And if the new piece of knowledge is consistent with that web, then that's no problem. You put it in there, you tag it to other things, and then you now understand the world better. If there's a conflict between you go out and you learn some new fact, and then you try to put it in your web of belief and it doesn't fit, or it overlaps, or it conflicts with something else, you have to choose to either reject the new fact and say this must not be true, or you have to go in and prune your tree and figure out the things that this contradicts. Are those things, what's the cost there? Is it more costly to reject the new fact, or is it more costly to shift around the tree and change things in ways that might have reverberant effects? And I think that concept is very core to the way that, again, we do science, the way that we integrate information. Like if whatever this node was turned out to be based on, come on, you can do it. Yeah, this is user ID, whatever, 1126223 or whatever. And say this is all the research that user scientist had done, and all of the links that it connects to is sort of the things that they have contributed to the web of knowledge. And then we find out that this person was a fraud, and they were actually falsifying all of their data, and all of these things are now sort of suspect. We have to delete this node. Then we have to sort of figure out how much of the rest of these things can stand on their own versus how much of them actually rely on that person's thing. And I mentioned that in terms of like the human falsification of science, which is never great, falsifying research. But that's also true about how theories evolve. And you got Thomas Kuhn paradigm shifts, structure of scientific revolutions, things like that, which we're not going to talk about because I'm already getting distracted. But I like graphs and nodes, and look at it go. But yeah, and I think running a little, yeah. And so this, the Markdown folder, and so we have all of our different things. So by server, and the top level is the categories, and then the channel, and then these are all of the conversations that came out of that. It takes a second to load. Oh, I should close this. And so this is someone who was asking about, this is not a good choice. Let's say reflex balance in ear infections. So this is someone asking about ear infections and how that could affect balance. The answer is, it can, for sure. That's part of the vestibular system gets involved there. And hopefully the bot said something similar. Yeah, vestibular rehab therapy, yep, there you go. And so these are the tags that show up, and then the backlinks I think don't work, so if you click on them, it doesn't work, and then this is that whole conversation there. And so the by topic is the new one. So there are a bunch of these. And so each one of these tags let's look at saccades. And you're gonna show up, there you go. And so this one, the tag link count is 9. So there were 9 chats that earned the saccade tag. And then there you go. So this is the Wikipedia style article that the bot generated. And I think I included, these are links to the chats. Again, the links don't work, but the names are accurate. So you could search for the name to find it. And this would have been the users that had the tag, but that part also didn't work. And then we can do groups, new group, file, and then share there. So all the red ones are the by topic one. Oh wait, and then file, user. And all of the, let's see, what color should these be? Magenta. And these ones should be, let's make them blue. And so all of the magenta ones are y'all guys, the users. So you can search for yourself in here. The ID is your Discord ID, so just right-click your name and get the user ID, and you can search for it. And so this is good old 12831 data 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 0736. Just take the last like 6 digits. You can search for that. That's going to be just as unique as the whole thing for these purposes. But this is a person who hopefully had something to say. Order is a little bit weird here. How did I do that? Yeah, so this person participated in 10 conversations on these various topics. And I have a suspicion that a lot of these are going to show up a little more generic than they want, because it's kind of like the smear effect that happens when you just lump everything together. But this is hypothetically a summary of whoever this person is. This is an overview of what their interests are and what they're sort of looking at. And as I said, there's sort of like the iterative nature of teaching a class like this. This is the kind of thing that I wish I could have done throughout the entire semester, and sort of like provide this sort of automatically as you go, and sort of develop this kind of like understanding of what each of you are interested in, and sort of trying to sort of, you know, steer and group and lump and sort of things, lump you together and stuff like that based off of this information. But unfortunately, the sort of, as is often the case in open source software, the vibe is better than it's ever been and worse than it will ever be. So you have gotten the best version of this class that has existed up until this point, and with any luck, you've also gotten the worst version of this class that will ever exist sort of going forward. So hopefully it was viable within that bound. Yeah, so yeah, so first things first, I think, would be to find the topics that you're interested in, and then just find yourself in this thing, and sort of, you know, look at what it found about you, look at what it thought you were doing, look at what it said your interests were versus what you're actually into. And yeah, we'll sort of come back to that in a second. And yeah, so the last thing I wanted to show you is something that is on the scale of, for more just like fun and a little bit horrifying, which is image generation. One of the things that these AIs can do is generate kind of like unsettlingly horrific imagery, particularly on the topic of biology, which I have, at this point, you've seen it. I think one of the main things this class is sort of like the undercurrents of this is like learning how to use AI, learning how to use it to explore things, and hopefully in tangent, learning how to recognize AI speech and AI text. Like, it has a certain smell to it, and you can sort of start to learn, you've already started to internalize, and you should continue to internalize what it feels like to talk to something that is not a human being. And sort of this, the general, the philosophical term is the grounding problem, like the sort of the slightly sort of floaty nature of the conversations. And it's like, it's just as willing to say something that's totally reasonable and something that's absolutely bonkers off the wall, because you are talking to a statistical blob of numbers when you have these conversations. And so learning how to recognize the differences there, I think, is just a useful life skill. And similarly, the pictures that they generate it's strangely almost the exact same technology that generates the images as generates the text. It's just in 2 dimensions instead of 1. But learning how to, at this point, you've seen them everywhere, and the question is, were you aware that you were looking at AI-generated imagery? And I'm just trying to find one. So at this point, I'm just going to go to this one. This was a conversation from Caroline with 14 messages in it, so I assume you talked about something interesting. You talked about that. And so in any chat, in any place, every time you do this, it costs me 4 cents. So be mindful of that. I haven't quite gotten to the point of running that locally, but /image. And you could give it a prompt, but there's a default prompt that just says like, make a picture from this text. Then use context. You want to set that to true. So context is like the place that you're in. So if I hit this button, then it's going to send something to DALL-E 3. So yeah, so it pulled the text. It comes up with this sort of like visualized description, and then in a second, it will produce something, or it won't. We'll see. There you go. There you go. And a picture based off of the conversation that happened. They're probably a lot going to look like this, and this is actually not a very offensive brain. This is an offensive brain. This is not what and this is not how that works. But you can also do, let's go to a different one. This is another 14 one from Skellybot. So images, and I'm going to give it a prompt and say, focus, I don't know, add dolphins to the imagery. Dolphins just to see if it's working. And then use context as true, and then it will do the same thing it did before, except now it will presumably have some kind of a dolphin-y theme to it. So yeah, please do that. Any conversation that you've been a part of that seems fun, and when you just want to do that, do it in the bot playground. You can also, if you don't use context, you can just do image generation and just tell it, show me. Yeah, there you go. So it doesn't really know. I don't know. I think this was a conversation about Parkinson's, so this is a bunch of happy, horrifying older ladies with brain hats, and then dolphins. And look at them go. Look how happy they are. So another thing I really hope that you can get from this is that these are not brains. You should be horrified at the biology of what it thinks a brain looks like. Doing right here and just say image, prompt, show me the neuromotor hierarchy. And then I'm not going to give it the context. And so we'll just see what shows up. It's probably something terrible. But yeah, so you can play around with that. I'll probably put some kind of limit on, because the text doesn't really cost any money. The image does, just because it's a bigger computation. It costs 4 cents. At some point, will have it running locally, so it won't cost me any money. How are we doing? It can't do words, so it does these horrible things. And it's kind of like, the term here is uncanny. It's close, but this person is not doing okay. Things are backwards. A lot of the parts that need to exist aren't there. But like, you can kind of recognize where it came from. Like, hopefully, like you can, there's some, what's the sympathetic trunk stuff going on here? That is the cerebellum. It wants to be the cerebellum. That's the medulla oblongata. That's the cortex. But the details are off. And neuromotor, it's like getting in a fight in your dreams. It's like not, the parts don't really connect. If I was a different kind of teacher, I would have like assignments that involved labeling all the things that are wrong with images like that, but I'm not that type of a person. So do it on your own, left as an exercise to the reader and all that. The main thing I was supposed to do, I actually forgot to do. I'll pretend like this is an assignment, even though, just because I know it's helpful to pretend these type of things. I'm going to make another channel. I'll do it by the end of the day, and it will be a sort of a pairing of the introductions channel that you did when you started, of like introducing yourself, talking about this, that, and the other. But it'll be more of an outro rather than an intro. And I will ask you to I won't do it in class, but I'll do it afterwards, and do it if you can. And I'll just ask you to like grab your summary, plop it in there, and then have kind of like an exit interview with the bot about like the things that you covered, the things you liked. And I'll come up with a prompt for that, so it'll be sort of, a semi-guided conversation. So I'll put it on Canvas, and it sure will look like an assignment, and let's pretend like I care about that. And just do it for your own edification and also my own. Yeah, I think that's about that. So I hope that you enjoyed this strange experience. We're not ready to leave quite yet. I think in the remainder of this time lunch, let's like pull up your stuff, pull up the final scraping. Look at the things that it was talking to you about, talk to amongst your friends about it, and I'll come back through and sort of chat through stuff until class is over in 35 minutes. So I suppose this concludes the part of the course where I stand up here and talk to you. So I hope you have enjoyed everything up to and including this percentage of the course. Thanks for showing up, participating, and being, I don't know how happily willing you were, but you were at least, no one complained too loudly at the strange and wacky structure of this course. I hope you got something out of it. Hope you enjoyed seeing a little bit about how the sausage is made, as they say. And and I hope to see you all around. So thank you for that. And with that, I will turn off the recorder and call it a semester. Almost. There's like 35 minutes left, but no record of that will exist. So bye.